She learned very early that being quiet made people forget. School teachers looked past her and students spoke over her rot. She was one more mouth to feed and not much else. No. One was cruel in loud ways, but silence can hurt just as much. She grew up believing that she had to accept whatever place life gave her. When she was young, she still had small hopes. She thought maybe hard work would be enough, maybe kindness would be noticed. But each year taught her a different lesson. People saw her only when they needed something done, then they moved on. By the time she reached her late teens, she stopped expecting help. She learned to fix things herself. She learned to stay calm even when her chest felt heavy. There were nights she cried quietly, so no one would hear, not because she wanted attention, but because the pain needed. Spacework became her escape. She took any job she could find, cleaning, helping, lifting, carrying, serving. She showed up early and stayed late, yet raises went to others' praise. Went to louder voices, she told herself. It did not matter, she only needed enough to survive. Living spaces never lasted long. She rented rooms where she was reminded she did not belong. Some owners treated her like a burdensome, like she was invisible. She moved often, carrying her few things and worn bags. Each move made her feel smaller. People talked around her, not to her. They decided who she was without asking. Too plain, too quiet, too broken. She heard these words even when no one said them directly. Looks of pity can be louder than insults. She tried once to believe someone cared, a man who smiled often and spoke softly. For a short time she felt seen, then he disappeared when things became difficult. That was when she promised herself not to hope again. Days blended together, wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. The world kept moving while she stayed in the same place. She watched others build families and homes. She told herself she was not meant for that life. Some people are meant to endure, not receive. One winter, everything shifted. Work hours were cut. The room she rented was sold. She was given little time to leave with nowhere to go. She packed slowly. Each folded item felt like proof of how little she owned. She searched for help. Friends were few and busy. Shelters were full. Every closed door echoed old feelings. The sense that she was unwanted returned stronger than before. Cold followed her everywhere, in the air, in her bones, in her thoughts. She walked longer paths just to stay warm. She avoided mirrors because she did not like the tired face staring back. One evening, she reached the edge of town. Beyond it rose the mountains. They looked endless and quiet, and like people they asked nothing of her. She felt drawn to the silence. She took a small job offer that others refused, cleaning an old storage place near the mountain road. The pay was low, but it came with short-term shelter. Single room, no heat, no comfort. Still, she accepted without hesitation. The place was far from town. Few people passed, but the nights were darker and colder. But for the first time, no one watched her. No whispers, no judgment, only the sound of wind and trees. She did not know then that this choice would change her life. That moment she only knew she was tired. Tired of being unwanted, tired of fighting alone. She went to sleep each night, unsure of tomorrow. Yet something inside her stayed awake. Small part that refused to disappear. She believed no one would ever choose her. She believed life would remain this way. But sometimes the quiet paths lead somewhere unexpected, and sometimes the person who feels least wanted is the one whose life is about to change. High in the mountains, far from the town, a man lived alone. He had lived there for many years after losing the person he loved. His days were quiet and predictable. He woke with the sun and went to bed when it set. He worked with his hands, fixing fences, chopping wood, gathering supplies. Mountains were his world, and he trusted them more than people. He had been married once, and the memories stayed with him. They reminded him of love and loss and made him wary of opening his heart again. He did not hate life, but he had chosen solitude to protect himself from pain. People in town respected him, but kept their distance. They called him quiet but strong. He did not care for their opinions. His home was simple. A small cabin with a single room and a hearth for warmth. Furniture was worn but sturdy. Every item had its purpose and place. Did not need much to live. The mountains gave him food, water, and shelter. It was enough. One day, while he was out fixing a broken fence, he saw her from a distance. She was walking along the edge of the woods, looking tired and small. There was something in the way she carried herself, not pride or arrogance, but weariness and quiet strength. He watched her move through the cold without complaining. He did not approach immediately, People usually came to him for work or advice. This was different, and she did not look like she belonged anywhere. He saw the weight she carried, and it reminded him of his own past. He decided to wait over the next few days. He noticed her often she found odd jobs for money and food. She moved quietly and never asked for anything. Her determination was visible in the way she handled tasks that others would find difficult. He admired that even from a distance. Then one evening he saw her struggling in the snow. Cold had reached deep into her bones. She was shivering and unsure where to go. He knew he could not ignore it. It had been many years since he had helped anyone, but something in him moved. He went down to the road and offered her a place to stay. She looked at him cautiously. Trust did not come easily to her. She had learned that people often said things they did not mean, but he spoke simply and directly, not pitying, not judging, just a simple offer. She hesitated and asked questions about the cabin, the mountains, the work. He answered truthfully. Did not make promises he could not keep. It was a small place, and she would need to help with chores. She would have food and shelter, no more, no less. She agreed. The mountains were unfamiliar, but safe from the eyes of judgment. She packed her few belongings and followed him up the winding path. The climb was difficult, but she felt a strange relief with each step, away from the town, away from whispers, away from rejection. She could breathe. The cabin was small, but warm. A fire glowed in the hearth, and the scent of wood filled the room. It was simple, but it was shelter. She felt gratitude. Without expectation, he showed her how to carry water, split wood, cook simple meals. The rhythm of work was steady and honest. There were no demands other than effort. Days passed and routines formed. She helped with chores and learned to read the signs of the weather. He taught her how to store food for winter, how to mend clothes, how to keep firewood. He did not ask questions about her past. She did not share unless she wanted to. The silence between them was comfortable, not oppressive. Sometimes they spoke about the mountains, the trees, the animals that passed through. She began to notice the way he observed the world carefully. Every movement, every sound was noticed. She admired his patience and strengthened. In return, he began to notice her determination and quiet intelligence. They shared the work and the meals. No unnecessary words, no empty conversations, just simple exchanges and cooperation, and slowly trust began to form. It was fragile at first. They both had known disappointment and loss, but the mountains taught patience. Sand patience allowed small connections to grow. She found herself smiling quietly when he shared a story about the forest or the animals. He found himself noticing her skill and care when she fixed something or prepared a meal. They began to anticipate each other without speaking. Work became easier and life less heavy. One evening they sat near the fire, listening to the wind and the trees. The world felt distant, and the mountains enveloped them in quiet safety. Thought about how different life could be if someone had chosen her before he. Thought about how strange it felt to want someone close after years alone. Neither spoke of these thoughts. They sat in silence, letting the comfort of presence fill the water. She began to understand that being chosen does not always come with fanfare or declarations. It comes with simple acts of trust and space. Sometimes it comes with an offer of safety. When the world has turned away and she felt a sense of belonging she had never known, he began to understand that opening up does not mean losing oneself. Care can be given without fear of being hurt immediately, that sharing the work of life can be a form of companionship. And he felt a warmth he had not experienced since before the mountains became his home. The days passed slowly and deliberately. I learned to navigate the mountains, the streams, the paths that were hidden from most icy. He taught her how to survive, not just live in. She found pride in her strength and the quiet resilience she had cultivated for years. The cabin became a place of small victories. Chores were done efficiently, meals prepared without waste, firewood stacked neatly. The work kept them busy, and the mountains kept them grounded. The world outside became less important. Occasionally they would speak of the town and the people she left behind. She realized that she did not need their approval anymore. Her value was not determined by whispers or judgments. It was determined by effort and character and the choices she made. Slowly the mountains began to change her. They gave her safety and the space to breathe. They offered steady work and honest labor. They allowed her to regain a sense of self that had been lost in the chaos of being unwanted. In return, she began To change him, he began to notice the difference it made to have someone reliable by his side, someone who understood the quiet rhythms of mountain life, someone who could share both the burdens and the small joys. Trust grew in small increments, not through words or declarations, but through axe carrying, water chopping, wood mending, fences, preparing meals, watching the wind blow through the trees together. Silence became a companion. The work became a conversation. The mountains became a bridge between two lives that had known loss and loneliness, and, in that quiet shared space, they both began to feel the stirrings of hope. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. She began to feel stronger and more capable. He began to feel lighter and less burdened by grief, and, in the rhythm of mountain life, they discovered the possibility of connection. Either expected love or friendship at first. They only expected survival and work, but as they shared the tasks and the bond between them began to deepen. It was subtle, but undeniable, and it was enough to start healing hearts that had long been bruised. Winter had settled over the mountains, and the snow covered the paths and trees. The woman had grown used to the cold and the rhythm of life with the man. Each day brought chores and work that kept their minds occupied and hands busy. The cabin was warm from the fire, and the daily routines gave them a sense of purpose. One morning she woke early and found the man already chopping wood. He moved with steady strength, and she watched quietly for a moment. Then she joined him, carrying logs and stacking them carefully, and worked side by side without speaking much. But the silence felt comfortable. After chores, she prepared a meal while he checked the fences. The smell of bread and stew filled the cabin, and the warmth spread through their bones. Small acts like this became their way of caring for each other without needing words. She noticed how he left her space to move and work without interference, and he noticed how she handled tasks with quiet determination and care. One day a storm rolled in from the north. A wind howled through the mountains, and the snow fell thick and heavy. They stayed in the cabin all day and night, tending the fire and securing the windows. It was during these times that their presence became most meaningful. Storm outside made the warmth inside more precious, and the shared effort more bonding. She began to open up slowly about her past, not all of it, but small pieces that felt safe to share. She spoke of the loneliness in the town, of the constant whispers, and the feeling of being unseen. He listened without judgment, and sometimes shared his own memories. The stories were short and simple, but they created a bridge between their lives. They discovered shared values and beliefs about the importance of hard work, honesty, and quiet strength. These were things that had been lacking in their previous experiences with people, and the mountains provided a safe space where they could live according to these values without outside interference. Food and work became celebrations of cooperation. They hunted and gathered together, prepared meals together, mended clothes and repaired tools together. Each task reinforced their connection and built trust. She realized that being chosen did not always mean grand gestures. Sometimes it was about showing care through small, consistent actions. He realized that opening his life to someone else did not weaken him, but strengthened the sense of purpose. They learned to read each other without words. A glance across the cabin could communicate readiness or a need for help. A nod or movement became part of an unspoken language that made life easier and more harmonious. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire listening to the wind and the snow. They shared silent moments where presence alone was enough. These were the times when trust deepened and respect for each other grew. She began to take pride in her own abilities and in the contributions she made to the household. She saw that she could be relied upon and that her work mattered. This was a new feeling that replaced years of being overlooked and dismissed. He began to notice her independence and strength. He felt admiration and a quiet affection. It was a feeling that had been absent in his life for many years, a feeling that grew slowly as the trust and shared effort increased. The cabin became a place of learning and discovery. She learned skills she had never known and found a confidence she did not realize she possessed. He rediscovered the value of companionship and the quiet joys of shared labor. One afternoon, they worked together to repair a section of fence damaged by the storm. They struggled at times with heavy logs and slippery ground, but they encouraged each other and completed the task with satisfaction. The teamwork reinforced the bond that had been forming between them during these times. They also shared laughter, small jokes about mistakes made during work, or funny observations about the animals that passed by. Laughter was easy and rare, but it reminded them that life could have joy, even in isolation. She began to feel a sense of safety. She had never known being chosen for a place, and purpose in someone else's life created a foundation for trust and confidence. She did not have to prove herself endlessly or fight for recognition. He began to feel a connection that went beyond simple companionship. He realized that someone had chosen to be there and stay in, that someone had value and strength that complemented his own. It was a partnership that had grown naturally through shared effort and presence. They faced challenges together: snowstorms, heavy work, and occasional injuries. Each challenge became an opportunity to show care and support. Each overcame difficulties, strengthened the bond. She noticed the change within herself. Quiet courage that had kept her alive through years of neglect and rejection now had a purpose. Mountains provided tests that built resilience and pride, and the man provided support and recognition for her abilities. He noticed the change within himself. He had feared attachment, but found that partnership brought meaning and warmth. He realized that choosing someone to share life with was not weakness, but a return to humanity. Together they began to see the value in shared life, not in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the small acts of choosing each day to support and respect the other. She felt hope for the first time. Not hope based on chance or luck, but hope built on daily actions and consistent care. He felt possibility for the first time in years, possibility that life could be shared and that someone could be trusted, and valued. Their bond was still fragile at times. Fear of loss and old habits of solitude would surface, but each time they addressed these fears together or continued working side by side, the bond grew stronger. She began to imagine a future where she was not invisible, where her strength and effort mattered and were recognized, where she could face life, knowing she was chosen not out of pity, but out of respect and need for her presence. He began to imagine a future where his life did not feel empty, where companionship and shared effort created meaning beyond survival, where choosing to care and allow care in return created a life richer than solitude. The days continued to pass in quiet. Routine work, fire, meals, and sleep became the rhythm of life, and within this rhythm trust continued to grow. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat quietly outside. The mountains stretched endlessly around them. Snowflakes fell slowly, and the wind whispered through the trees. They shared the moment silently. No words were needed. Presence alone was enough to convey the bond that had formed. She realized that she had been chosen for life in a place where she could thrive, not because no one else wanted her, but because someone saw value and strength in her that others had overlooked. He realized that choosing her was not about filling a void, but about recognizing partnership and incapability. And slowly they both began to understand that life could be better when shared with someone who truly sees and values you. And in the quiet of the mountains, with snow around them and fire within the cabin, found a sense of connection and belonging that neither had expected, but both had quietly longed for. Spring was slowly arriving in the mountains, and the snow began to melt, revealing rocks and soil and early green shoots. The woman had grown stronger and more confident in the rhythm of life with the man. She felt a sense of belonging and purpose that had been absent for so many years. The man noticed changes in her too. Her movements were assured, and she handled chores with skill and care. He realized that having someone beside him made even the hardest tasks lighter and more meaningful. The mountains were no longer just a place of survival. They had become a homemade place of trust and shared effort, a place where they both felt seen and valued. One morning, a messenger from town arrived unexpectedly. He had come to ask if the woman could return for work or to help with matters at home. The man watched silently as she listened. He did not speak, but observed the tension in her shoulders and the cautious look in her eyes. She thanked the messenger politely and declined. The mountains had become her world, her work and life with. The man had given her more than she could have imagined. She did not need approval from the town or validation from people who had overlooked her for years. The man felt pride and relief. He knew that she had made her own choice, and that it was the right when their lives together were built on trust, not obligation. And he had learned to value her decisions, and judgment days passed with the slow emergence of springly. Streams ran fuller, and the birds returned. The air was warmer and filled with sense of new life. Work continued, but now it included planting seeds and repairing fences and preparing the cabin for the months ahead. They worked together naturally, and the partnership was seamless. Sometimes they would pause and sit together listening to the sounds of the mountains. The quiet moments felt as important as the work itself. She found joy in small victories. A patch of garden thriving, a fence standing strong, a meal prepared and shared. These were signs that she was contributing, and that her presence mattered. He found joy in her presence, in the way she handled tasks, in the way she understood the rhythm of mountain life, in the way she brought care and effort without complaint. The town began to notice changes too. Some whispered that she had changed. Others were curious about her bond with the man, but they no longer had influence over her life. She had learned that approval was not necessary for happiness. Sometimes the weather was harsh. Storms would blow through unexpectedly. Snow or rain or wind would test their skills and endurance. Each challenge became an opportunity to work together and support one another. She noticed that he relied on her in ways she had not expected, not for pity or help in weakness, but for partnership. In strength, she felt proud and recognized for the first time in her life. He noticed that she had grown more confident, more capably, more sure of herself and her place in the world, and he felt a deepening respect and affection they spoke rarely about emotions, but their actions conveyed everything. Sharing chores, preparing meals, gathering supplies, repairing fences, and tending the land. These acts were their language of trust and care. Sometimes she would share stories from her past, not the painful parts, but small memories that shaped who she was. He would listen and sometimes add small stories of his own. These exchanges created bonds beyond words. The seasons changed and life continued. They faced difficulties, but they faced them together, celebrated small victories together, and they found contentment in shared effort and mutual respect. She realized that being chosen was not about being needed because others had rejected her. It was about being valued for who she was, and she felt a sense of pride and belonging. He realized that choosing her was not about filling a void. It was about recognizing partnership and strength. And he felt a warmth he had not known in years. Together they created a life built on trust and shared effort. Mountains witnessed their partnership and growth. The cabin became a home of quiet safety, and care. Occasionally visitors from town would come by, some curious, some surprised, but they no longer influenced or judged. She had learned to stand firm in her decisions, and the man respected her choice. Their bond deepened not through dramatic moments, but through daily life, through showing up for one another and valuing each other's presence, through shared work and shared silence, through quiet respect and consistent care. She discovered strength she did not know she possessed, confidence that was built on effort and acknowledgement, a sense of self that had been absent for so long. He discovered warmth and companionship, trust that had been absent for years, the joy of sharing life with someone capable and reliable. Together they faced storms and calm days. They faced tasks that tested strength, patience, and courage, and each challenge made them stronger and closer. The mountains became a place of healing, not just physical shelter, but emotional refuge, a place where past pains could be acknowledged but not allowed to dominate. They learned to communicate without words. A glance, a movement, a simple gesture conveyed meaning and understanding. These small acts of recognition and trust became the foundation of their bond. She felt chosen, not because no one else wanted her, but because someone truly saw and valued her, and that recognition gave her a sense of purpose and belonging. He felt that choosing her was an affirmation of his own understanding of value and partnership, and that choice created warmth and meaning in a life that had been quiet and solitary for too long. Their life continued in the mountains. Work, meals, rest, and quiet moments of connection, and each day reinforced the understanding that choosing someone and being chosen in return created a life richer than either could have imagined. Alone, they knew challenges would continue. The weather, the isolation, and the past would occasionally resurface. They had built trust, resilience, and partnership hand that gave them strength to face whatever came through shared effort and mutual respect. Through quiet presence and simple care, they discovered a life where both were valued and seen, and slowly they realized that they were building something that could last beyond the mountains, beyond the storms, and beyond the past that had shaped them. Summer arrived in the mountains, and the air was warm and filled with the scent of flowers and fresh earth. Woman and the man had grown closer over the month's trust. Understanding had formed a bond that neither had expected there. Daily routines continued, but now there was comfort and companionship in every task. They worked together from sunrise to sunset, chopping wood, planting gardens, tending animals, and repairing fences. Each task became easier with shared effort and mutual support. They moved in harmony without needing many words. The woman had discovered a sense of confidence she had never known. She knew her strength and valued her own decisions. She no longer feared being overlooked or dismissed them. Mountains and the man had given her space to growth. Man had discovered warmth and meaning. He realized that choosing to share his life with her brought life back to his world. He felt trust and affection without fear of being overwhelmed by loss. Together they began to explore new possibilities. They worked to improve the cabin and expand the gardens they planned for the future, knowing that the mountains could provide but also required care and effort. Sometimes they walked to higher ground, looking out over the valleys and forests below. The beauty of the mountains reminded them that life could be both simple and extraordinary. The town occasionally sent news or requests, but they no longer needed approval or validation from anyone outside their home. They found a place where they were seen and valued, where effort and care were recognized and appreciated. The bond between them continued to deepen. Small acts of kindness and shared work reinforced their connection. A glance could communicate understanding, a gesture could show care. Their unspoken language of trust was stronger than words. She began to understand the power of being chosen. It was not about being needed because others rejected her. It was about being seen and valued for her skills, her effort, and her heart. This realization gave her peace and purpose. She began to understand the power of choosing. It was not about filling a void or seeking companionship out of loneliness. It was about recognizing strength, loyalty, and character, and valuing it. This realization gave him warmth and fulfillment. They faced challenges as they always had. Weather would test them. Tasks would strain them and old fears would surface, but they faced everything together. Their partnership made them stronger and more resilient. The woman felt joy in contributing, seeing the fruits of her labor in a thriving garden, a repaired fence, a well-tended animal. She felt pride and recognition. These were things she had never experienced in the town. The man felt joy in sharing life, seeing her grow confident and capable, knowing he had chosen wisely, feeling warmth in a connection built on respect and trust. They began to dream quietly about the future. Not grand plans or dramatic changes, but small improvements and a life that continued in partnership and mutual care. So shared stories and memories from their pasts, sometimes painful, sometimes joyful. These stories were shared without pressure and received without judgment. They built understanding and deeper trust. The seasons continued to change. Autumn would arrive with crisp air and falling leaves. They knew that life in the mountains required preparation and attention. They prepared for winter together and planned for the months ahead. They continued to learn from each other, from mistakes in work and successes in planning, from observations in nature and quiet reflection. Their partnership grew with every day that passed. The woman realized she had found a place where she belonged. Because no one else wanted her, but because someone truly chose her, she felt valued and strong and capable. The man realized he had found a companion who shared his values and work ethics, someone who made life richer, not by words, but by presence and effort. He felt grateful for the choice he had made. They celebrated simple victories together. Meal cooked perfectly, a fence repaired, a garden flourishing, a day completed with satisfaction and peace. They faced storms and calm days alike, always together, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating together in moments of success. Through the months and years they built a life of work and care, of trust and companionship, life where both were chosen and valued. The mountains became not just a place of survival, but a place of belonging. The cabin, not just shelter, but home. The daily tasks, not chores, but shared purpose. The woman grew stronger and more confident each day. The man grew warmer and more fulfilled. Each day together they created a life that neither had expected, but both had quietly longed forth. They knew that challenges would continue, life would test them, and the world outside would still exist, but within their chosen life together. They had built a foundation of trust and partnership, had learned that being chosen and choosing someone in return created a life that was richer and more meaningful than either could have imagined. Alone, the mountains witnessed their growth, and the cabin became a symbol of resilience, care, and shared life. And slowly they understood that love and companionship did not need grand gestures. They grew naturally from trust shared work and mutual respect. The quiet life they built together became a life full of purpose, warmth, and belonging in the mountains. Far from town and past whispers, they found each other and built a life where they were both chosen and valued in. In that choice, they discovered a sense of peace, joy, and connection that lasted through the seasons and the years. Time passed in the mountains, and the woman and the man continued to live and work together. The seasons changed, bringing new challenges and new beauty. Spring rains nourished the earth, and the garden thrived. Summer sun warmed their skin, and the trees provided shade. And fruit autumn painted the mountains in orange, and red winter brought snow that covered the world in quiet white. They faced each season together with cooperation and care. Every task was done side by side. Every challenge met with teamwork. Shopping, wood gathering, water planting, and tending animals. The rhythm of life kept them strong and connected them. Woman had grown in strength, confidence, and skill. She knew she could handle difficult work, navigate the mountains, and survive the harsh weather. She had learned to trust her instincts and decisions. She had discovered the value of patience, persistence, and resilience. The man had grown to he found joy and companionship in shared effort. He realized that opening his life to someone capable and caring did not weaken him, but enriched his days. He learned that trust and connection were gifts that could be nurtured over time. Their bond deepened in ways neither had expected. It was built not on words or grand gestures, but on shared experiences, daily choices, and quiet acts of support. A glance, a nod, a helping hand became a language of love and understanding. They celebrated the simple victories together. Fence repaired, a garden thriving, a meal shared after hard work. Each accomplishment reinforced trust and respect. They found meaning in the everyday work and effort. Visitors from town occasionally came to see them. Some were curious, some skeptical. Their presence did not disturb the harmony they had built. The woman had learned that approval from others was not necessary for happiness. The man respected her autonomy and decisions. The mountains became more than shelter. They became a teacher and a witness. They taught endurance, patience, and observation. They showed the value of effort and care. They reminded the couple that life was richer when shared. She reflected on her journey from being overlooked and dismissed to being chosen and valued. She realized that her worth was never determined by the opinions of others. It was defined by her effort, her care, and the choices she made each day. He reflected on his journey from solitude and grief to connection and trust. He realized that companionship was not about filling emptiness. It was about recognizing and valuing strength and character in another. The couple faced unexpected challenges, storms that threatened the cabin, heavy work that tested endurance, injuries, and illnesses that required patience and care. Through all of this, they supported each other. The bond that had formed grew stronger and more resilient. They learned to communicate without words. A look could express concern or encouragement. Gesture could show understanding or approval. They relied on presence and action to convey trust and care. The woman continued to grow in confidence and independence. She discovered the power of being chosen, not because she was overlooked, but because she was valued. She felt pride in her abilities and in the contribution she made to their shared life. The man continued to grow in warmth and fulfillment. He discovered that choosing someone for partnership was an act of respect and recognition. Felt gratitude and joy in their shared daily life. Together they dreamed quietly about the future, not in extravagant plans. But in practical improvements, better storage for winter supplies, a stronger fence, a larger garden planning, for comfort and sustainability in the mountains, they shared stories from their past, sometimes painful memories, sometimes small, joyful moments. These stories built understanding, empathy, and deeper trust. Neither forced the other to share more than was comfortable. Life in the mountains was not without difficulties. Isolation could feel heavy at times. The weather was unpredictable, and harsh tasks were demanding, but the presence of each other made the hardships lighter. They found joy in small things: watching the sunrise over the peaks, hearing the call of a bird, finding a stream flowing with clear water. Simple pleasures that were richer because they shared them. The woman felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her for years. She knew she was valued for who she was and what she brought to their life together. Recognition of her strength, care, and loyalty gave her peace and purpose. Man felt a sense of fulfillment that had been absent since his loss. He realized that companionship and shared effort created a life that was richer and more meaningful than solitude. He found warmth and trust in their bond. They faced the world outside the mountains with calm and confidence. Town whispers and opinions no longer held power over them. They had built a life that was secure and grounded in mutual respect and care. Their daily routines continued with comfort and stability: chores, meals, rest, and quiet moments of observation. Each day reinforced the sense of partnership and shared purpose. They taught each other patience and resilience through observation of nature and careful attention to tasks, through supporting each other in work. And in moments of doubt, through silent encouragement and shared effort, the couple realized that love and connection could grow naturally without grand gestures, dramatic declarations, or external validation. It grew from shared life work and trust, from choosing each other consistently, day after day. Learned to celebrate effort and perseverance, not perfection, but the willingness to try. And the care in their actions, they valued each other's contributions and recognized the strength of character. And hard seasons passed and life continued. Spring brought growth and renewals, brought abundance and warmth. Autumn brought preparation and reflection. Winter brought stillness and quiet reflection. Through it all, they faced challenges together and celebrated victories together. Each they strengthened the bond and reinforced the sense of partnership and belonging. The woman continued to discover her own resilience and capability. The man continued to discover the joy of companionship and shared life together. They found a sense of peace, fulfillment, and connection that had been absent for many years. They had built a life where they were both chosen and valued, where trust and effort created a foundation stronger than any hardship, where love grew quietly through shared experiences and consistent care. Mountains remained their home, the cabin their sanctuary, the daily work their language of care and respect. Through all of this, they discovered the richness of life when two people choose each other and nurture that choice through patience and understanding. And in the quiet presence of the mountains, with seasons flowing and days passing, they knew that being chosen and choosing in return created a life full of meaning, warmth, and belonging. A life that neither could have imagined alone, but that together they had built and cherished. The mountains had become a place of life and learning for the woman and the man. Every day brought new challenges and new chances to grow and understand each other. They had learned to move together in harmony with the land and with the rhythm of nature. The woman had grown stronger and more skilled. She could chop wood, navigate difficult paths, gather food, and care for the animals with confidence. She had discovered that her abilities mattered, and that she could contribute meaningfully to their shared life. The man had grown warmer and more open. He found joy in teaching and sharing the knowledge he had gained over years in the mountains. He realized that partnership could be fulfilling and that trust could create deep connection. Together, they faced weather that could be harsh and unpredictable, storms that would test the cabin and their skills, snow that covered paths, and streams that swelled from rains. They learned to anticipate challenges and support each other in ways that required cooperation and understanding. Their bond deepened in silence and action. A glance across the cabin could communicate concern. A helping hand could express further Language of work and presence became stronger than words. They shared meals together, simple. Food made with effort and care. The act of preparing and eating together became a way to communicate respect and appreciations. They spoke of past lives, of hardships endured and lessons learned, of mistakes and small victories. These conversations built empathy and understanding and strengthened the foundation of their relationship. The woman discovered the power of choice. She realized that being chosen for partnership was not about being needed because others had rejected her. It was about being valued for her skills, effort, and heart. This knowledge gave her peace and purpose. The man discovered the power of choosing. He realized that selecting a partner based on trust, respect, and capability was a meaningful act. It brought warmth and satisfaction and a deeper sense of connection. They celebrated small victories together, repairing, fencing the garden, thrive catching fish from a stream, completing daily tasks efficiently and with care. These achievements strengthened their trust. In companionship, the seasons passed and life continued. Spring brought growth and renewals. Summer brought warmth and abundance. Autumn brought preparation and reflection. Winter brought stillness and introspection. Through all seasons, they faced challenges and enjoyed successes together. Visitors from town came occasionally. Curiosity or work brought them by. The couple no longer relied on approval or validation from the outside. They had built a life that was independent and grounded in mutual respect. In effort, their communication became intuitive. Small gestures and shared tasks conveyed feelings and understanding. They learned to read each other's needs without asking. This made life smoother and strengthened the bond between them. The woman continued to grow in confidence and independence. She discovered her own resilience and capability. She realized that her worth was defined by effort and care, not by outside opinions. The man continued to grow in warmth and fulfillment. He discovered that companionship and shared life brought joy and meaning. He realized that trust and connection could create a life richer than solitude. Plan for the future in small practical ways, improving the cabin, expanding the garden, repairing tools, preparing for winter. Reach decision and action reinforced their shared purpose and trust. They faced challenges without fear. Heavy snow or illness or difficult work, they relied on each other and shared the load. Partnership became a source of strength and comfort. They found joy in observing the mountains and nature, the call of a bird, the flow of a stream, the sight of new flowers or animals passing through. These simple pleasures became richer because they shared them. Woman felt a sense of belonging she had never known. She knew she was chosen and valued. She realized her contribution to their life was meaningful. She felt pride and purpose. The man felt a sense of fulfillment he had not felt in years. He realized that choosing her had created warmth and meaning. He valued her trust and care and was grateful for the partnership. Together, they dreamed quietly about the future, not in grand plans, but in practical improvements and continued growth. They imagined a life of stability and continued connection with the mountains. As their home, their bond grew through shared experiences and consistent care. The mountains were witness to their growth and partnership. Cabin became a symbol of resilience, trust, and collaboration. They learned that love and companionship could grow naturally through shared work, trust, and daily choices. It did not need dramatic gestures or constant words. It grew from consistent presence and effort. They celebrated each other consistently, acknowledging effort and care, recognizing skills and resilience, supporting each other in times of difficulty. These acts built a life of shared purpose and satisfaction. The seasons continued to flow, and their lives remained intertwined with the rhythms of nature. They faced challenges and enjoyed victories. Together, the partnership strengthened and deepened. The woman had discovered resilience, confidence, and purpose. The man had discovered warmth, trust, and fulfillment. Together, they had created a life that was richer and more meaningful than either could have imagined alone. They had built a life of choice and trust, a life where both were valued and respected, a life where each could grow individually and together. Mountains remained their home, and teacher the cabin remained their sanctuary. Daily work became a language of care and connection. Through all of this, they discovered the richness of a life built on being chosen and choosing in return. In the quiet presence of the mountains, with days passing and seasons changing, they understood that partnership and trust created a life full of meaning, warmth, and belonging. It's life that neither could have achieved alone, but that together they had built Ants Kush,